I have with me today CEO of Founders Metals, Colin Paget. He was on my show maybe just a month ago, and I'm actually quite excited. I think there's a lot to talk about, even though it's been just a month. But before I sort of delve into that, so we always, just let's get this disclaimers out of the way. This is not financial advice. We are not your advisors, and there will be forward-looking statements being made. But, typically I generally try to wait. I don't like to saturate the market, so to speak. I like to try to wait a few months and let news build up to make sure that interviews have enough meat on the bone to be relevant to companies and to investors, right? But I think that, honestly, even in those 4 or 5 weeks since I last spoke to Colin here, that the news that Founders has produced, it has been enough. And it's been material enough that I think it warrants a sit down here, because I think that, and I'm going to turn it over to Colin here, maybe just to kind of talk us through this a bit and let him, not so much let me talk, but let him talk us through. But I think that the key factor for me that this seems like a fundamentally different project, or my understanding of it is fundamentally different than it was a month ago, and that comes down to not just what's being found, which is incredible, but where it's being found. And so Colin's just going to talk us through last 3 or 4 drill result updates. And Colin, we just have a bit of a PDF here that we're going to share with people here, so we have some visuals. But Colin, I'm going to pass it off to you, and why don't you just try to tell us a story here about what the heck is going on and why it's so incredible?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks again for having me on here. I enjoy the chats. Kind of just starting here, big picture in terms of the project. All of our work has really been focused on Upper Antino, but we see that really as part of what is a much broader kind of northwest trending system. Boise is another target we've talked quite a lot about and have plans to get down to later this year. That's really the big story right now are these 2 areas, though, from the historic data that we're showing here in terms of augers, there's certainly a lot more out there. And, one thing that's, evolved with the project is just how much of an exploration pipeline we have just in the Upper Antino area alone. But then beyond that, what we've got, left to work down at Boise, these 2 targets to test, and then all of that represents only a third really of the property out there. So there's a lot of room for growth. Looking at the news releases that we put out, where it is a good way to say it. We've been really focusing, early on this year, kind of starting out the 2024 program. We're focusing on, testing a little bit further along strike, the mineralization in that, parallel zone. Although we'll get to the figure, but some of our most recent press releases show that it's not so much a parallel zone as just all one big zone. So, we put out results, some great ones here. We had 15 meters, 8 grams, but more importantly, a number of zones, stacked. And that was the same thing for both 48 and 49 with some pretty impressive gram meter products, over the drill string. And, this is an image right here showing Froyo, what we've been drilling. And to kind of remind people, we started really focused on this area here, and all the big news last year, really came out of the kind of main Froyo shear area. And in terms of timelines, it's kind of end of November-ish. We basically needed to step back to be able to hit that structure deeper down. And when we did, we wound up hitting this material, some of it right from the surface, with some pretty high grade, pretty broad intervals. But as I mentioned, that kind of stacked shears that with plenty of mineralization. And it's important because it fills that volume in. You think about potential future mining scenarios, and if you've got one steep structure, kind of regardless of how high grade it is, you're still faced with a fairly high strip ratio from a mining standpoint. Whereas if you've got gold over a much broader area, then you're looking at something that has a pretty low strip and makes for some pretty nice economics. So yeah, that was the first part of kind of what we've been working on, or what we've had come out. Since then, we've had some more infill here. We have done some drilling to the north, and we'll have some results coming out on that drilling, probably in the next couple of weeks kind of thing. And we've also done a bit of drilling to the south as well, just looking to extend things in both directions. So that's really the message for Froyo right now is we're kind of extending in all directions effectively. And then as we come along, hitting that parallel zone, we're looking to infill what we can. Cross section through that too, just to give a better sense of what that looks like in the third dimension. Over here again, this is that original kind of Froyo gold zone. This is the stuff that we hit in the setbacks. And since then, we've put out another release that's, added some material in here. So we really are seeing that kind of whole volume start to fill in. And there's still drilling to do, certainly. It's not, we don't have drilling all the way across strike, the whole way along strike. That's to come. But, things are very promising. And certainly the scale of things is expanding. I think this is our February 23rd release. This was pretty exciting because, this one covered a lot of things, actually. And I think maybe didn't get picked up on by a lot of people. So, I'm glad that we're kind of having this chat to go through it. But the big thing with that release is we wanted to get, a couple kind of big news items out there that we could talk about kind of over the coming couple of conferences here. And, they're both pretty big things. Zooming in or coming to the next figure, the results that we had have been fantastic. And we released results both for what is a 90 meter down dip extension on Froyo, hitting 8 meters at 8.4 grams. Along with these are those intervals I said kind of fill in the gap up here in that area where, again, we're seeing some nice, consistent grade that tie in very nicely with structures that we see further along strike. That's the Froyo piece. So, 90 meter down dip extension, we're now down to a vertical 250 meters where we've hit mineralization at Froyo. The other big part of the messaging of Froyo that we wanted people to get is that, there's been this, I've heard from a few people, like, well, does it extend to the Northwest? And the reality is we have a lot of data that supports it extending to the Northwest. I mean, we haven't drilled it, so we can't say for sure until we get the assays back, that kind of thing. But ultimately, we're drilling through a historic pit, kind of talk on the ground from any of the older miners that did some artisanal work back when work was done here at Eclair. They said that some is the highest grade material to come out of the Upper Antino area. So, very promising. And with this release, we also put out some of the historic auger samples. And, those are really important because they're auger samples that were collected before any of this artisanal mining took place. And so we're comparing apples to apples across the kind of whole Upper Antino area. And we're not, concerned about there being contamination from, mining that's happened and that sort of thing. So, grades of some of those are, 14, 15, 18, 25 grams per ton type material at surface up here in the historic auger work. And yeah, we're excited to continue moving it in the northwest direction and really building. Likewise to the south, we have grab samples from the end of the pit here that are, I think up to, we've got several sampling, over a half dozen that are greater than 20 grams per ton in the shear that we can walk up to and touch. And so it stands to reason that it certainly does continue down towards the runway. So we're getting those drilled and we'll get some results on it as quickly as we can. The next big thing, I guess, and I think a big part of this conversation here and kind of connected to today's release as well is the donut area. Donut represents one of the high priority drill targets that we had come out of the all the exploration work that was done last year, particularly the geophysics, the mapping, and some geochemical work or historical work. So we were pretty excited to drill it. There were a couple of historic drill holes, pretty shallow, but some great, some nice grade. 40 meters of 2 and 37 meters of almost 1 are still great hits, and were part of why we wanted to follow up on this. But we drilled now 7 holes here. And this is the figure for the release that we put out on the 23rd or last week. But this is the first time that someone's hit some pretty big things. We're seeing visible gold in core down in this area. At the time that we did these analyses, they were just done as kind of straight 50-gram aliquot fire assays. So we've not done any screen work, metallic screen work or anything like that. So, we're interested to do that to see if we maybe get a bit more of the gold out of the core. And if that has any effect on the overall grade, that's a possibility. But the big thing here is that, Donut, we're 800 meters away from Froyo, and we're seeing 45 meters of 2 grams or 15 meters, well, including 15 meters of 4.6. That's not so low grade. Certainly we've been talking a lot about this intrusion hosted target as being at kind of bulk tonnage, low grade type material. And this right away is, pretty impressive. But then today's release is where it kind of goes to the next step or next level. And in the follow-up hole underneath that we were waiting for assays back when we put out that last figure, 19 meters of 14 grams. I mean, this is the type of material that, we've hit quite a few times over here at Froyo. And so it's a pretty exciting piece to have that kind of intercept there. Really points to, some significant potential for a very large thing over here. So we have a drill finishing up a couple of holes, and then we're heading back to Donut quite quickly here, so we can actually start following up more and look to, see how this extends further down dip, and then, what we have along strike as well. Right now we've got drilling that, is mineralization pegged for about 250 meters, but there's work to be done so we can properly understand it in the same way that we certainly do at this point at Froyo.
Yeah, I mean, it's just exciting, right? And I mean, this one, like, I think this is where I started, right? But just to reiterate, right, that you follow your story and great grade. And the last time we chatted, right, is that sort of that threshold where it might not be open-pittable yet. We don't know. Underground looks good, but to me, I mean, just the way that this has evolved since you and I spoke, it strikes me that the economics are suddenly just kind of, going through the roof a little bit in terms of what's actually capable of being done in this area. Froyo is broader and deeper than when we last spoke, and Donut, which you said it was supposed to be bulk tonnage. And you have, I think there's, in your last release, there was 37 meters of 0.63 grams per ton, which is, nothing to sniff at in a bulk tonnage situation. But then add on 45 meters of 2 grams. And then, bulk tonnage situation with 19 meters of 14.23 grams per ton. I don't know if I would call that bulk tonnage at that point anymore. And so, like this rapidly evolving understanding, at least from my perspective, right? Maybe I'm just, Johnny come lately or slow to the uptake, which I've been accused of before, but that this is, materially different than it was even a month ago. I guess, if I'm trying to do, some follow-up questions here, I mean, is it comfortable to, not to put you on the spot, but I mean, Froyo especially, where you've got a bit better understanding, are you approaching open-pittable at an area that you're kind of comfortable to say, or is that still yet to be determined?
I mean, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to do some open pit mining, as far as like, resource and future economics and all of that. That obviously comes out of the, the work that has to go into doing a proper MRE and a PEA. But, at this point, with the areas that we have drilled through, I mean, you look at this figure here and, and honestly, there's no pit shell on there, but it starts to look like a shell, or it starts to look like a pit already. Yeah. So we're, excited about that. But there's still a lot to build. I mean, we've got another 700 meters of kind of strike extent with surface, mineralization at surface and alluvial mining, etc. We can continue past that. That's by no means the end. As far as, from the information we have, there's no reason to think it stops there either. So there's a lot of room to grow, but open pit, would be the idea, with this sort of target initially, and then moving to underground likely afterwards, would be the idea, I think. But that'll come out of the engineering, etc. I think down the road here. The other one that, I guess, just because we're on this figure, and I often forget to mention it, is because we haven't yet done any work there, is, this historical pit here, this is Cupcake. And I put that in the figure that has the soil geochemistry in the last release, or the auger sampling. One of the historical hits there, Cupcake was almost 89 grams per ton in an auger sample. And so there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for finding more potentially, even between these two. There's a lot of area here in the middle that's never been drilled, never been mined, never really been touched at all. So, there's quite a lot of opportunity. And I mention it because when you think about the sorts of hits that we're seeing over here, another really big part of this is when you think about the mineralizing system that's driving this, it has to be a pretty big system to get the kind of mineralization we see at Froyo. And then, you're almost a kilometer away, and in a different deposit type, this is more intrusion hosted, you're getting the same sort of tenor of mineralization. So, certainly points to there being a lot there. And the historical alluvial mining obviously points to that as well. So,
yeah, it's I think that you strike me as a kind of data oriented and understated guy, but I just like this story. It's kind of there's exclamation marks involved at the end of it, kind of thing, right? Not to be too glib, but you have over a kilometer, you've got Froyo, and now you've got Donut that's emerging as a fantastic target all on its own as well. In between, you have that Cupcake, as you said, and this is east-west, and as you kind of referenced, Froyo itself, trending northwest, it's in all cardinal directions. There's more and more to be done here, right? I guess it's kind of a softball question, but I think it matters because you've had a little bit of love today, but when I saw it today, when I saw the news, as someone who now is kind of plugged into your story decently, it materially changed my understanding of what's going on these last couple of things. But to me, it almost feels like people are a little slow on the uptake here. What do you think people aren't getting here? Because to me, it seems kind of blindingly obvious that this is an exceptional project that is just getting started. This is only the Upper Antino. You have multiple other sort of targets to be had, but is there what's I'm asking you to discuss the vagaries of the market, but what do you think what's part of the story here that people maybe aren't picking up yet?
Yeah, I don't know. I think some of it is one is understanding that this isn't a long section, which is important. As a cross section is showing two completely separate things that go into and out of the page sort of thing. And so it's getting that message across really that this is a proper new discovery, with some real grade and real potential to grow, and that there really is a lot more going on with Froyo, and that there's a lot of opportunity for it to grow. When I think of some of the questions that I've gotten from people and, that would have been, objections to, jumping in or adding more, there were things like, what evidence do you have that there's, continuation of gold mineralization to the northwest? Just bounce back to this, to the northwest, in this direction. And I guess to me, it just, it always could imagine why there wouldn't be. But, I think it needed saying really, that look, there's all of those alluvial and artisanal mining pits up here. Lots of references to some high grade gold. We ourselves have grab samples, up to 15 grams per ton here. Lots of great historic auger samples. So it's just really showing people that there is the opportunity for continuation of the sort of hits that we've been having to that northwest area. That's, I think, a big part of it. Anyway. And then after that, it's just recognizing that Donut is a whole other piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all these things are starting to come together, and I think this is part of what really caught my attention. When I finally sat down with this properly, is that you're just chasing old pits, right? You're chasing talk about the ultimate kind of pathfinder metal is gold, right? And previous mined gold, right? So I think that's a huge part of this, that it's de-risked in a way that you would call. It's not greenfield, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, right? And so this is I say this in jest, but you're supposed to go to Boise, but are you ever actually going to get out of the Upper Antino? It seems like there's no reason to stop if you keep producing these numbers. But can you maybe just fill us in on your future plans there?
Well, a week ago, I'd had a different answer. A week ago, I would have told you that, we have a few things to finish up in terms of exploration targets up here, and that we were planning to kind of take one drill and head down around the middle of April. Right now, I think that, just with what we have at Donut, I think we get the best bang for our buck in terms of the logistics and everything with the 2 drills to just keep them working up here. So that's, we're putting together another 2,500 meter plan for Donut as follow up to the work we're doing. And then, we've said all along, and we're going to, one drill is going to be pretty much exclusively at Froyo. So building out to the north, to the south, and infilling in the middle there, that parallel material. So for Boise, I don't want to say Boise delayed, but I think Boise really, we're going to get down there when we get, our next rig on site. And that's when it goes straight to Boise sort of thing.
Do you have a timeline on that? That's a question people are coming up with, is third rig when?
Yeah, I think, in terms of timeline, we're looking at kind of the May-June timeline for getting a third rig there. Because we do it ourselves, there's a number of things we have to put together so that we can be properly efficient with getting that rig in. So, the crew training piece has been moving along really nicely with getting people lined up to actually work a third rig. And, we have the capacity in camp, so that's not really an issue. But then it's just getting the rig to site and, moving forward.
And maybe just we'll call it here quits so we can have a bit of a quick hitter interview here for once. But you 30,000 meters is your stated plans for 2024. I mean, would you accelerate that? At what point do you think that? I mean, how aggressively do you hit this based on the success you're seeing?
I mean, I think really we're at a point now where we can say we have a project, and so for shareholders and for shareholder return, the best thing is to move it forward as quickly as we can. And that's going to mean more rigs and more meters. The 30,000 meters that we have planned, that's really within the budget or the cash we have in the bank. But we've still got a lot of warrants out there. I think with the success that we have had and are continuing to have here, we're going to see more of those come in. And, we have every opportunity to extend the program even within 24, kind of using some of that cash. So that's where we're at.
Yeah. And maybe one more here, Colin, and I'll give you the chance for final thoughts afterwards, but maybe I'll just throw CO.ca followers a bit of a bone. People are, and it's kind of the boogeyman of shorts. Is there, I think we touched on this last conversation, but maybe I'll have an opportunity for you to speak to it again. I mean, do you actually have real shorts that you feel you've attracted this to founders? Because I think that's a conversation people are having. And I think maybe it's, in your case, a little bit of much ado about nothing.
Yeah. Everyone sees the short report. I think we're right around 1.4 million right now. Certainly some of those, I don't have a handle on where every single share on that list would be. So there certainly could be some people out there shorting. I think this would be a tough one to stay in as a short. But it's their investment thesis, I guess. But the majority of those are, institutional holders, I think, that have the opportunity to hedge against warrants, and I think that's what we see. And so, the actual shorting or the selling pressure sort of thing is, I think, been long behind us for a lot of those, and it's really cash waiting to come into the bank effectively because they'll have to cover at some point here, and they'll be covering with the warrants outstanding. So, yeah.
Yeah, not maybe the fear or the nightmare that some people have around that one, and that you can sometimes see with other stories. And
I've gotten questions too about the 4-month hold or the 80-cent paper. I guess people wondering about the BMO deal and are those individuals or those people that were involved shorting, etc. And that's really just not the case. It's not really even a possibility at the moment. I got all of that still on hold until the end of March. So those were all, very high quality institutional investors. These are institutions that are willing to, in the type of market that we're in right now, to take a 4-month hold with no warrant. And so, very high quality investors. People are looking for long-term hold.
And I think this is, there are some stories that I like that I have to be pretty nimble with. This is one that I'm just buying and, just put it in the sock drawer and can kind of forget about it, metaphorically speaking. Colin, final thoughts? Like I said, we'll try to keep this one short and sweet, but anything you want to end on?
I think we've covered most of the big ones. I'd say PDAC starts this weekend, early next week, and I think talking to a lot of people there's going to be a lot of opportunity for some to further get the story out and do much what we're doing here. And that's just having people really see and understand the potential for multiple deposits here just in Upper Antino with pretty significant scale. And there's lots of other opportunities just in this small area. So, like I said at the start, the exploration pipeline for this project is really impressive, and we've get some more drills on site and start moving things more quickly in terms of production is really going to be a priority going forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I will definitely be stopping by the booth. I told you this before we started recording that I have to come home and hold some of this core in hand. It seems like it's a special story and some special rocks there. So otherwise, yeah.
I might as well mention that, I guess, just on that point, like at PDAC, Founders Metals will have a core, or in the core shack on Tuesday and Wednesday next week. Welcome anyone to come by. I'll be there for some of it, as much as I can. And then Pascal Vogley, our VPX, will be there as well. And so will Vincent Combs, or Dr. Vincent Combs, who's our chief geologist. He's the fellow that did his PhD on the Yao deposit across the river. And as far as talking about rocks and structure and what we see out there, I don't think there's really anyone better on the planet for that. So definitely come by.
No, perfect. And yeah, I look forward to meeting you in person and shaking your hand. And otherwise, they'll call. Yeah, thanks for your time and thanks for listening. And yeah, exciting stuff. And stay tuned because you guys there's always more drill results to come with you guys. So have a good day, Colin, and talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks very much.
Awesome.
Cheers.